They were Hitler's elite soldiers, feared on every front, and recognized by their black uniforms and ruthless reputation. When the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, however, their war did not simply end. Some were captured and tried. Others disappeared and quietly rebuilt their lives in post-war Germany. In the decades that followed, a final struggle would emerge. Not fought with weapons, but over historical memory itself. In May 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. Across Europe, hundreds of thousands of Waffen SS soldiers laid down their arms. Once presented as Hitler's elite, they now found themselves prisoners of war or fugitives across a devastated continent. In the immediate aftermath, the Allied powers ordered the complete dissolution of the SS and all its branches. Waffen SS units, from frontline divisions such as Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler and Das Reich, to auxiliary formations recruited in occupied territories, were rounded up by British, American, and Soviet forces. Thousands entered captivity, often still wearing the uniforms that had symbolized terror only weeks earlier. Legal accountability followed quickly. At the Nuremberg trials held from November 1945 to October 1946, prosecutors argued that the entire SS, including the Waffen SS, had been a central instrument of Nazi crimes. On September 30th, 1946, the International Military Tribunal declared the SS a criminal organization. Under that ruling, simple membership in the Waffen SS could constitute a crime, although exceptions were made for those conscripted after 1943 or those proven to have had no ideological involvement. Denazification courts were established across occupied Germany to classify millions of former Nazis, from major offenders to nominal followers. For Waffen SS members, outcomes depended largely on rank, place of service, and local political conditions. A small number of senior figures, including SS Brigade Führer Kurt Meyer of the 12th SS Panzer Division, were tried and imprisoned for atrocities committed in France and Belgium. Others faced military tribunals for crimes in Italy, the Balkans, and on the Eastern Front. Most lower-ranking members, however, were released within months. Their records were noted, but their lives often continued with limited interruption. Conditions in post-war prison camps were harsh. Many detainees were held in improvised outdoor enclosures and faced disease, hunger, and uncertainty. With millions in custody, Allied authorities prioritized identifying senior leaders and known offenders. Those not selected for prosecution were gradually released during 1946 and 1947, frequently with no clear prospects. Some returned to destroyed communities in Germany and Austria. Others passed through displaced persons camps in Allied zones. A minority chose to flee. Using forged documents and informal support networks, some former Waffen SS officers escaped Europe. Karl Nicolucci Lesch, a former Panzer commander, reached Argentina in 1948 and established a quiet life under Juan Perón's government. Similar escape routes led to Spain, Syria, and Egypt. These movements later contributed to reports of so-called Nazi rat lines, allegedly supported by clerical or intelligence contacts, claims that remain partly documented and partly disputed. For those who stayed, the early post-war years brought social and economic exclusion. The Waffen SS name had become closely associated with brutality and ideological fanaticism. Veterans were often barred from public employment, pensions, and official war grave commemorations. As late as 1948, German authorities operating under Allied supervision continued to treat the Waffen SS as a criminal entity rather than a regular military formation. Within 3 years, a force that had numbered close to 1 million men had been reduced to scattered individuals facing prosecution, restriction, or obscurity. The collective judgment had been delivered at Nuremberg, but individual outcomes were still unfolding. The creation of the Federal Republic of Germany in May 1949 opened a new phase for the country and for former Waffen SS members. West Germany's early leaders were tasked with rebuilding under Allied oversight. The population included large numbers of former Nazi Party members and soldiers, among them many former Waffen SS personnel, often young, combat experienced, and politically controversial. The Western Allies initially maintained a firm position. The Waffen SS remained a criminal organization, and its members were to be excluded from civil service and state benefits. Reconstruction soon created practical pressures. As the Cold War intensified, political pragmatism increasingly influenced policy. The new state required stability and electoral support. By the early 1950s, debates over veterans' welfare became central in the Bundestag. A key development was the Bundesversorgungsgesetz, the Federal War Victims Relief Act of 1950. Designed to support disabled veterans and war widows, the law triggered controversy over whether Waffen SS veterans should receive benefits equal to those of Wehrmacht soldiers. Conservative leaders, including Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, concluded that total exclusion risked alienating a significant voting bloc. In 1953, Adenauer publicly stated that Waffen SS men had fought as soldiers like others. The statement carried symbolic significance and indicated a shift toward partial normalization. In practice, some former Waffen SS members became eligible for limited pensions, especially those who could demonstrate conscription after 1943 rather than voluntary enlistment. By 1956, the question extended to service in the newly formed Bundeswehr. In principle, former Waffen SS members could apply. In practice, only a minority were accepted. Records show that by September 1956, of 3,117 applicants with Waffen SS backgrounds, only 508 were approved. The remainder were rejected due to ideological concerns, criminal records, or objections from Allied advisors wary of reputational risk. Those accepted generally avoided discussing their wartime roles. Outside official institutions, many former Waffen SS members found work in industry, construction, or small businesses. Personal networks sometimes helped secure employment, though social stigma persisted. Public discussion of wartime service was often avoided, reflecting a broader culture of silence in 1950s West Germany that favored forward-looking reconstruction over retrospective examination. Moral and political disputes continued. For many victims of Nazi persecution, the extension of pensions to Waffen SS veterans represented a serious injustice. Survivor groups and left-leaning publications criticized the policy, while conservative voices defended it as part of national reconciliation. Historians later observed that economic reintegration often preceded moral reckoning. By the early 1960s, West Germany's economy was expanding rapidly. Many former Waffen SS members had achieved personal stability, but resentment remained among those who felt stigmatized or denied recognition. These sentiments soon found organized expression. In the early 1950s, former Waffen SS officers began forming advocacy networks. In 1951, Paul Hauser, Otto Kumm, and Felix Steiner helped establish HIAG, the Mutual Aid Association of former Waffen SS members. Initially focused on welfare support for veterans denied benefits, HIAG developed into a lobbying and public relations organization. Its leadership argued that the Waffen SS had been unfairly condemned and should be regarded as a regular combat force. This message gained political attention. Conservative politicians seeking veteran support engaged with HIAG representatives. Adenauer met privately with its leaders, and figures such as Franz Josef Strauss spoke at veteran gatherings. Adenauer's 1953 public remarks about Waffen SS soldiers reflected, in part, HIAG's lobbying efforts. By the mid-1950s, HIAG claimed tens of thousands of members and maintained branches across West Germany. It published magazines including Der Freiwillige, organized reunions, and sponsored memoirs portraying Waffen SS divisions as elite military units rather than ideological formations. Paul Hauser's 1953 book, Soldaten wie andere auch, Soldiers Like Any Other, became central to this reinterpretation. HIAG's influence peaked during the 1960s. Some former SS officers obtained public roles, and local media sometimes covered Waffen SS commemorations without criticism. In the 1970s, however, a younger generation began confronting the Nazi past more directly. Journalists and historians challenged HIAG's revisionist narratives and documented efforts to minimize war crimes. A 1978 Der Spiegel investigation exposed the organization's political connections and lobbying tactics, weakening its credibility. Major parties gradually distanced themselves. HIAG remained active into the 1980s, but with declining membership. It continued to campaign over memorials and recognition, while anti-fascist groups protested its events. In 1992, facing dwindling support and public opposition, HIAG formally dissolved. Many observers believed the debate over the Waffen SS would finally subside. It did not. The legacy and the myths persisted. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, newly opened archives and expanded survivor testimony provided further evidence of Waffen SS cooperation with security police and Einsatzgruppen units, undermining claims of a purely military role. At the same time, new controversies emerged. In the 1990s, investigative reports revealed that some former Waffen SS members were still receiving state pensions under earlier benefit laws. Coverage in major publications triggered public criticism, particularly given that many Holocaust survivors had received limited compensation. Governments debated reforms, but legal frameworks established in the post-war period proved difficult to reverse. Outside Germany, the Waffen SS legacy took on additional dimensions. In parts of Eastern Europe, especially the Baltic states and Ukraine, veterans of locally recruited SS divisions were sometimes commemorated as anti-Soviet fighters. Annual marches in Riga honoring the 15th and 19th Latvian SS divisions drew criticism from Jewish organizations in the European Parliament, illustrating how Waffen SS memory became intertwined with post-Soviet identity politics. Within Germany, public attitudes hardened further. By the 2000s, open admiration for the Waffen SS was broadly unacceptable. SS symbols were prohibited under Section 86A of the Criminal Code. Nevertheless, some far-right groups continued to circulate SS imagery online, portraying the Waffen SS as symbols of strength or pan-European identity. Authorities repeatedly intervened, citing threats to democratic order. Academic research increasingly focused on structural analysis rather than general moral judgment. Historians including Sönke Neitzel and Peter Longerich examined how ideology, discipline, and violence operated within the Waffen-SS system, concluding that it functioned as an armed extension of Nazi political power rather than a separate military body. Social historians also studied the long post-war silence surrounding the Waffen-SS as part of Germany's broader struggle with memory and responsibility. Today, very few Waffen-SS veterans are still alive. Their organizations have disappeared, but the debates, documentation, and contested interpretations remain. 8 decades later, the history continues to serve as a reminder of how narratives can be reshaped over time and how long their effects can endure. If you found this report useful, you may also want to watch our next analysis on what happened to the Hitler Youth after World War II, and how its members navigated the collapse of the regime. For more historical briefings, subscribe to History Inside. Thank you for watching.